thank you everyone for coming to this episode of Freedom for Wild Horses. I'm very delighted to have on today Sandy Sisti of Wild at Heart Images and Gina Kutras of For the Love of Aria. And we're all working together to help the horses that were rounded up from McCulla Peaks. And that's why we're doing the podcast today. I thought I would start with talking to Sandy about the roundup of the McCulla Peaks horses in Wyoming and why we're doing this. So, Sandy, can you give us a little background on the roundup and where the horses are now?
Sure. Thanks for having me here, Carol. Appreciate it. Well, the McCullough Peaks Roundup began at the end of November. It finished on March 8th. And there are 39 horses at this time at the Rock Springs Wild Horse Holding Facility. We did lose one horse, Cat Baloo, the beginning of the roundup. So there were 40 horses taken total, but 39 shipped to Rock Springs. And what we're trying to do is to work with Gina to make sure all the horses find sanctuaries or private homes where they will be safe and as happy as possible. So that's what we're working towards. Now that the roundup's over, we kind of have to look ahead and try and help the horses to find a soft landing.
Yes, and we're hoping that the tentative dates that the Bureau of Land Management have given us for the adoption remain the same, which is May 6th through 13th. They are not going to be adopted in person in Rock Springs. However, they will be on the online corral. So people will have to bid online to get the horses. And of course, it makes it a lot more complicated when you have an online adoption because you have people can bid from all over the country and you can't tell who's bidding. Whereas at a in-person adoption, you can see the other bidders and you can see the bids happening and it's a lot less complicated. So I'm really excited that Gina has agreed to work with people who are interested in the horses and also people who are interested in donating to help the horses. So Gina, can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like for you?
Yes. So I definitely wanted to find a way to help horses without actually taking the horses, if at all possible, because I think that's the only way we can do any of this going forward. Sanctuaries are full, but willing to work together. And I think that's huge right now. So a lot of what I've been doing is educating people about the online auction, about the requirements from the BLM, about the adoption process, and then educating people about older, recently gelded stallions, bonded horses, and how, we were horse people and we were a horse rescue, but Mustangs are different. I think both of you know that. So I feel like we've been super successful in educating people and understanding how to do all of this that will hopefully carry over after the McCulla Peaks horses are adopted.
So not everybody is really set up or even able to take a wild horse.
Yep. And and they don't know that, right? They don't know it innocently. Like we read the requirements before we attended our first adoption event. Rescue, we'd been doing horses. So thought we were ready and weren't quite. So a lot of it really is people not understanding the difference between domestic horses and wild horses, wild Mustangs. And so, there's a lot of talk about the people who do this for no good, but there are a lot of good people really just trying to help. And that's where I feel like so many people have reached out with good intentions, but now understand a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. So, and in your experience, the younger horses are much easier to adopt than the older horses.
Yes, much easier to adopt, much easier to gentle. Here at For the Love of Aria, they all get a choice in what they do, but there are people looking to do different things than we do with the horses. And many of those young horses will be successful, and we just don't know. And that's where we want to create those connections, those relationships, to say more people have to be able to do this if we're going to make a difference in the whole Mustang world. And I think that's where, again, we've succeeded. But people have a lot to learn. And then when they learn about bonded horses is a whole different game. And I learned that early on before Mustangs, and then older, recently gelded stallions. You just never know.
So Sandy, what are who are some of the horses who come from the same families that are there at Rock Springs?
Well, let's see. We have Flora, who's a younger horse. And she was taken when she was 6 months old, and we have a lot of her cousins that she was bonded with in the family. So there were 4 other cousins of hers that she's with, and probably because they're all so young, I'm sure they won't have trouble finding a good home or a private adopter to take them. We have some families with stallions and mares. We have Garth and Boreal, 2 stallions. Garth was the band stallion. Boreal was the lieutenant stallion. They're both 14 years old, and their mare Mika is there with them, and she was born in 2017. Another horse that we have a pair is San Jose, 15, and 13-year-old, his mare, a Black Beauty. We also have 2 bachelors that were very bonded, kind of on the cusp of, I'm not quite sure if they're too old or they would be good with a private family, but they're both born in 2020. That would be Tomahawk and Kentucky. We also have another older stallion, Las Vegas. He's 15 years old, and his mare Smoke, who I believe is also around 15 as well. So we do have some family groups there, older families, then some horses that were mares that were bonded in specific bands. We have Miss Pac-Man, and she was in the band with Lily. And so we have horses that know each other from the range. So I think it probably would be good if, especially the older ones, could be taken together.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense, of course.
Yeah, and I would just, in any kind of rescue, and I'm hesitant to use that word because we don't know these horses, right? They're coming out of holding, but we have always taken in pairs, even when they weren't family members. And, the 3 of us understand what the family means on the ranges, and really hard to explain to people. But even just coming out of holding, I think they do better with horses that they have been with.
Yeah, and especially too, if they're having to travel quite a long ways, that's going to make things much less stressful for them. I mean, if people take them from back east or a little bit further away, traveling alone would be very difficult, and traveling with a buddy is going to be much easier.
Yeah. And I mean, that's horses, right? They're herd animals. So even if they were in with horses from different ranges, it's just ideal. It's probably not going to happen with every single McCulla Peaks horses, but I think people who don't do this all the time truly understand why that matters, just because they're horses. And I think that's huge.
What's been your experience, Gina, as far as older horses really kind of needing a sanctuary rather than a private adoption situation?
So as I said, we're just like a lot of people, good hearts. We had done rescue. We'd done lots of horses. I grew up with horses. And I think you just never know. But I would say across the board, the older stallions have a harder time. So that doesn't mean that they're dangerous to humans. It doesn't mean that they're going to leave the property, but the adjustment is huge. And Sandy, I should know, but I don't know how big the range is. So Carol,
it's about 110, 115,000 acres.
Oh, okay. I'm more with the sand wash 160,000, but you're bringing them to a more enclosed area, no matter how you look at it. And I think that was the big learning curve for us, is that the space can matter. It can matter to how they feel, how they settle. I have worked with older, recently gelded stallions who honestly ran away the minute I looked at them from the house, and they're just not used to being in smaller spaces. However, we want to define that. 110,000 acres is huge. And so who they were on the range matters. So if they already had trouble with humans on the range, and then you're taking them to smaller space, that instinct, that behavior is going to come out.
So yeah, I would imagine for the more dominant stallions, it's going to be harder than the less dominant stallions, and harder than for the mares.
Yes. I mean, that mares, if anything, seem a little more reactive. And again, even the geldings recently gelded, even if they are not trying to fight or be dominant, like I do think we have to think about their happiness, and I get that that's human, but we have to think about their well-being. And they don't do well in confined spaces. So I'm happy to be honest. We had 5 acres when we got Mustangs, and we ended up with a 20-year-old mare. Wasn't dangerous, but she was miserable on 5 acres. So that's why we bought more. And luckily we were all in at that point. I have a great family, but not everybody can just pick up and move. And so I think the older ones, the bonded ones, in my opinion, need to go to people who understand what it's like to be wild, so to be on the range, and what it's like to be in confined spaces.
And the older stallions also, I've been a horse person for most of my life, and I know that when you geld an older stallion, it takes a long time for that testosterone to wear off. So that's something that has to be absolutely factored in.
Absolutely. And that's been the education with people who say, do we really need 6-foot tall panels? Yep. We have 10-foot tall panels. We have built because we have done everything not exactly right, but they can jump a 6-foot panel. It has to be high. And not everybody has the ability to even have that on intake of the horses. And I think that's huge.
What's it been like talking to obviously one of the things that you and all of us want to avoid is a huge bidding war. Yeah. Because you'd much rather have all the horses get a place and especially not have sanctuaries bidding against each other. So, and I know that you have relationships with a lot of sanctuaries. So how has that been going?
So this is where I'm going to get a little emotional, because we don't know, right? We don't know what this is going to look like. Everybody is in this for the well-being of the horses. I can 100% say that. How it turns out, we can't predict, but I have seen something I've never seen on this level of sanctuaries communicating honestly, right? They're not all just going, okay, whatever you tell us to do. We're horse people. Nobody is going to go, oh, whatever Gina says, but we're having those discussions. We're having those communications. And I think that is huge for what we've done. In the past, it's a bit on a smaller level. And then we get to the adoption event, or we start bidding online, and we're like, oh gosh, we didn't know that organization wanted horses. And I think now everybody knows, everybody has attachment, Sandy, to certain McCulla Peaks horses, but everybody understands and is willing to have these discussions. And again, that's a huge success before we even go into the auction.
Yeah, it's one of the most beloved herds in the country.
Yeah, so, I did not know
that. Yeah. So, so that's really important. And And you and I also were talking about there's one sanctuary who has volunteered to help if there are horses that get placed and it's not
Yes.
successful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is like so important because
So
things
important.
happen.
Yeah, no. And that, again, these are the things that make me emotional because everybody I've reached out to, whether had a relationship or not, and we have made it our mission to create those relationships, to visit sanctuaries, to actually talk with people. But no one has said, "Oh, I don't have time to talk to you." Everyone has said, "This is where we are. This is what we do. How can we help?" And so having those backup sanctuaries sounds really bad, but they're willing to wait it out with this small number of horses because they really do specialize in the ones who cannot be around humans, and that is so important.
That's really important. And
Yeah,
I know everybody has the best of intentions, but sometimes that's just not enough.
exactly. But if you have, everybody should feel better with a backup plan. Anybody who works in horses, should feel good about a backup plan because all of us that do this every day know sometimes our backup plan is, letter M. We start at A and we're on M by mid-morning. And so I think having all of those people willing to do what they do best is how this is going to work.
That's great. And
Yeah.
so, of course, if people want to adopt, there is the online corral, which they need to sign up for, and then
Yeah.
they have to fill out an application prior to the adoption.
Yeah.
And then for people who want to support these horses and make sure that they get a soft landing, they can donate and they can also buy things in the upcoming art auction to support that. And so tell me a little bit about how the money is going to help the horses.
So the simple version is the money's going to follow the horse. So when we first started our organization, we did it to help other organizations. And that's where I felt, not just called to do this, but I've done this. I've been through the paperwork. I've been through all of that stuff. It's not a flawless system. But ideally they will apply for the funds for the horse or ideally horses that we're trying to keep together. They will tell us a little bit about themselves. Our application is pretty straightforward. We're, what do you need the money for? Because long term, anyone that takes them needs to be able to support them long term. So this is a little bit more of the short term, and the way the donations are coming in, we may be able to help a little longer. But ideally, they have the ability to care for these horses without our help. And that was a learning curve for me in a nonprofit. Like nobody gives you a grant until you prove that you don't need the grant. And so that's huge. We're not looking to just help these horses and then 2 weeks after the adoption back out. We're looking to stay in this. So they will apply for funds per the horse. They will fill out what they're applying for, why they're applying for it. And then my board of directors has done this. And so it's not equal money, if that makes sense. It's going to be based on need, the number of horses organizations and private adopters are willing to take. And that's where we will look to Sandy to say, during that week, who do you think really needs to stay together? So we will focus on the older, the bonded, because I do think the younger horses have a better chance. And again, if we can be backup for those private homes or resources, right? We have trainers and transporters and all the things now. But the older bonded horses, that is the goal. And I think both of you agree on funding for that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, people have been very, very generous, but like you said, Carol, we don't know on an online auction. And that is our first in-person event was a little bit crazy. And then our first online auction, like it was so crazy. We just didn't know. And that's where I wanted to facilitate that communication. What if we knew a little? Are there going to people be bidding that we have no idea who they are? Absolutely. But if we know a little bit more, does that help are we all working for the good of the horse? And at the moment, I think we are.
Yes. And the online auction, it has its pitfalls. Obviously, sometimes people just bid to run up the bid. Sometimes people back out once they've won the horse, and then the BLM goes down the list to the next bidder, then the next bidder, and then the next bidder. So sometimes people who really hadn't expected to win the horse end up getting the horse.
Yep.
So, and obviously the more communication that we can have during this and beforehand is very important.
Yes. Yep. Agreed. And we can only do so much, right? If somebody is determined, we have all been very public, right, about what we're trying to do. If somebody is determined to make it not happen, they have a chance to do that. I have not come across anyone yet. And again, like you said, we have no idea they could come in. But at the moment, if I say, oh, that bonded pair has three sanctuary offers, people are like, great, where what can I do now? Where should I donate now?
Yes.
So I think it's really cool.
That's really wonderful. That is very wonderful. And then obviously, sometimes in these online events, you have horses that don't get bid on. So that would be an important thing to do during the auction, is to be watching very carefully. And then obviously you can then talk to people and say, hey, listen, this mare didn't get a bid.
Yes. Yep. And I think it happens more often than people think. Again, this is a small number. Ideally, this carries over to other horses at some point, but it happens, and well-known horses end up with no bids, or they back out, like you said, and the organization was like, well, I agreed now to take another one. So what do I do? And that's where funding after the horses are adopted will come in. And that's where this is not a cut and dry, black and white. When you get the funds, when we secure the funds, that is all going to be a work in process. But it was very successful with the sandwash geldings, and I would have to look back at how many, but a much larger number. But it was very successful to communicate.
Well, and I know sometimes in some of these online auctions, the horse has been shipped across country to somebody and then they refuse the horse.
Yep.
So obviously being able to have that in place in case these things happen is very important. Also, I strongly recommend people get their own shipping arrangements done, because the BLM has been known to ship the wrong horse to people, which is crazy. I mean, that would be just so devastating to end up with the wrong horse. So I think if people are at all able to arrange their own shipping arrangements, that's the best way to do it.
Okay. Yeah. And that's, like I said, we kind of jumped in, and, we do have horses that got taken all the way to Florida, got passed over, and we were expected, even though the BLM was driving back to Colorado, they did not bring those horses. And honestly, that, I would have to look back, but 10,000 easy. I mean, it's a lot of money. So yes, we are happy to help with people who want to pay transporters to bring them directly to them instead of the pickup location, not pay them. We're happy to give those funds like that. I see being a huge use of the funds. As people say, I can afford the horse, I can take care of the horse. Would you be willing to help with the transport costs? And so, I never thought about that. And I haven't looked at the pickup areas just because we don't have the confirmed dates.
No, they'll be published with the dates on the online corral, obviously.
But transport, I think, is going to be huge. And I do believe there are qualified people all over the country. That can be also a little controversial. So yes, they've lived in Wyoming. It doesn't mean that they can't live in North Carolina, but let's get them there safely.
Yes, absolutely. And I did ask, I called the corrals and talked to them last week, and was told, I said, so how soon are you going to be able to picking up the horses after the auction? And they said almost immediately. So that, but when the BLM takes them to like a certain point for people to pick up, that's going to happen later.
Yes, definitely later. And, we did run into that with, again, we have supported people across the country. One of the transport places was shut down a week before they were to arrive. They were quarantined, so the horses could not be shipped from Colorado to the other place. So those things, it's definitely iffy. And Carol, we've never picked up right after, so that was really good for me to know that is a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my board is ready to, for however many applications come in, and we're committed 100% to that week and the following weeks, focusing on these horses.
So people will, you said after they have won the horse, adopted the horse, that's when they would do the application for the funds, not before, when you don't even know who's going to be taking who.
So no, they can do the application before, but they will not get the money until they get the horse.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So we are good at budget. We're good at budgeting for other people.
Yes.
So, and that was part of this too. I don't have any personal investment. I just want all of these horses to have, good homes. And so I felt like that made us a very fair organization. We're looking at the applications but no, we will, once we have the confirmed dates, we will make it very public, and we will post those applications so they can apply before. They just won't receive the funds unless they get the horse.
Okay. And for people who are looking to adopt, all you have to do is Google BLM online corral and set up an account, and then do your application.
Yep. And when we first started this, whenever that was, Sandy, the system was down, right? And then as soon as it came back up, people were getting approved within 24 hours. I have several handful, probably 15 to 20 people that they're now getting messages that say, we are approving based on how they come in. So I took a screenshot today. So like one says, you're number 6 out of 48 applications.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that is new for me. So I don't know if it's backlog from them catching up, or if it's from all of us saying, get your applications in. But I know someone that's been over a week and is still only number 4. So I would, if you have interest, you need to get those applications in. If this is going to be May 6th.
Strongly encourage, in case it is May.
Yeah.
I did reach out to the public affairs person, Sarah Beckwith, who's really been in charge of getting the information out about the roundup, and then about the adoption. And she's pretty sure, it's still tentative that it's May, but she's pretty sure it's going to happen if the horses can be prepared in time. Okay. And people ask, okay, what does that mean, prepared? So basically they freeze brand them. They put a tag, which has their tag number around their neck. They also draw blood to do a Coggins test. They give vaccines, and they have to geld the stallions. And as of last week, they had not gelded the stallions yet. And so that, how many stallions? There can't be more than like 25 stallions, Sandy, right?
There's probably, there's more stallions than mares, just a little bit more. So probably about 20, 21.
Okay. So, and I know those facilities can get 20 done in a day. So it's just a matter of them prioritizing it and getting a vet out there to do it. If the stallions have a testicle that has not descended, or both, that's called a cryptorchid. They have to do surgery actually to geld those. So we're hoping there won't be any of those, because that will obviously take longer for those horses. Mm-hmm. So those are all the things they have to do to prepare the horses. 3 years ago, I was in an adoption, and they hadn't finished gelding all the horses that were at the facility. And so they were continuing to geld them as they went along, because there were several hundred horses that needed to be gelded.
Wow. Yeah, and we have had that too. More the in-person adoption events where they they hadn't gotten the Coggins done. So you could adopt them that day, but you couldn't take them home that day. So and I do think, we need to be ready for the May 6th, but there's so many variables.
But of course they could do the adoption and then hustle and get the horses ready after the adoption. But, I have no control over the BLM. Neither do you.
Yep.
And they used to be a lot more flexible. For instance, Micah, my Adobe Town gelding, when I got him, he was only 6 months old, and they gave me a voucher for $25 so that I could geld him later. So they don't do that anymore. They do not release horses without gelding them anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, let's maybe hurry up and wait. And that's what people are struggling with, how much money do you need? When do we get the donations in? And I do think we do that sooner than later. And I'm grateful for everyone understanding I needed to do my little fundraiser, but it may be a case of we're all ready to go and everybody has their applications and we have this money and we have to wait. But I think, being prepared is better than not.
And I do think that the BLM would prefer to get these horses out of there sooner rather than later.
Yes, and that has been my experience in calling as well, because I don't know the Wyoming BLM. I don't know the people at Rock Springs, but that's the feeling I've gotten as well every time I've talked to them.
Yes, because of all the attention and all the people calling, and they'd really rather not have all that going on. So that's good, because we'd really rather not have the horses there any longer than they have to be. That is for certain.
I agree. Yes, I agree. And so if you're thinking about doing this, do it. Get your applications in.
So, and then we have our art fundraiser starting on the 22nd. That'll be going through the 2nd of May. And you can donate money, or you can bid on artwork and jewelry that we're going to have on the auction. So I'll have that posted with the podcast on my website, the link to that. And then, of course, we'll be spreading it around starting on the 22nd.
Perfect. Yeah. And Carol, I think it's just important that people do understand that is coming to us, not to you, not to Santa.
Yes, so it's coming directly to you.
Yeah, directly to us. So so there's definitely been question about that. We're truly all working together for the same purpose. And so your money is not going anywhere besides us unless you choose to do that on your own to a different organization, which is fair. Absolutely. But
absolutely.
Yeah, anything Carol and Sandy are doing is coming to my bank account.
Exactly. And I just so appreciate your connection and your stand for community. With the people involved, because if we're a community, we can work together, and we're not trying to tear each other down. We're not trying to compete. We're trying to hold each other up for the sake of the horses.
Yeah. And it's fair that certain people love the same horses. Like, I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. Like, absolutely, I have wild heart horses. Some of them are here. Some of them I travel the country to go see. Literally, we're going to Texas in May to see a couple of the babies we got to name in Sandwash Basin. And like, just to have that connection with those private adopters, this is what makes me emotional. It's possible. It's possible to do this, and with a smaller number. I know it does not seem small to you, Sandy, and I hate saying that, but it's more doable. And then what if we could do this when 2,900 are rounded up in Northland? I think if we can figure this out, and other organizations can do what we've been successful at in small numbers, we can change the Mustangs' lives.
And I am really grateful that the horses are at Rock Springs, because people can go there, they can see them. The Rock Springs people are taking good care of the horses there, and they haven't fallen into a black hole like Wheatland or Canyon City. So it's actually a really good thing that they are where they are.
Perfect. And I do plan on attending the in-person event. Oh, we should probably clarify that, because I am still getting messages daily. The in-person event on April 27th is confirmed not to be McCulla Peaks.
Yes. And I think you and I have both confirmed with the BLM,
Yes.
Public Affairs, with Rock Springs, everybody. No, the McCullough Peaks horses are all going in an online event.
Yes, it was a little confusing with the numbers, so I understand the confusion. But yes, we will. I'm hoping to, just see Rock Springs because I have not been inside that facility. So,
Yeah, no, that'll be great that you're going there.
yeah, and we do. I think that's another important. We do our homework. Like, do we know that everybody we give funds to, that everybody is going to do right by these horses? We kind of do. Is there a chance we're wrong? But we still have a relationship with those people. We're not just handing out money.
Yes,
We're doing our homework.
And anything that people can donate is helpful.
Yeah.
So $5, $10, anything that people want to donate will help the horses.
More than you can possibly imagine. And I think that's huge. The people that send me $5 and say, I know this doesn't help. It helps. Watching $5 add up in a day is incredible.
Well, and the other thing is that obviously Sandy, you and I will be keeping people apprised of what's going on the whole way. I mean, we will be letting people know when we get the dates confirmed. We'll be letting people know, when the auction is starting. We'll be keeping people informed. So, and then this episode will come out on the 22nd when the art auction starts. So hopefully we'll be able to encourage people to get involved and to go to the auction as well.
Yeah, and I'll be ready on the 22nd. Yeah. And I'm happy to answer anything. People also are reaching out and saying, I don't want to bother you. Bother me. Like that's why I'm doing this. That's why my organization is doing this, because we have learned so much. We've learned a lot of things the hard way. So reach out, ask me questions. We want to share what we've learned.
So, and I also really want to encourage people to go to Sandy's Facebook and Instagram accounts, Wild at Heart Images, because she has such a depth of knowledge about all of these horses. And she has all these posts on her page where you can see pictures of them. You can find out about their families, find out about their behaviors. And it's just an incredible resource for people to learn about the horses.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of, Sandy, that you want to say about the horses and about this?
No, other than I'm really grateful to both of you, Carol and Gina, for helping to find homes for the horses, the auction, keeping everybody apprised of what's going on, talking to the BLM, Gina talking to the different sanctuaries and the private adopters. It really means a lot from someone who really loves these horses. It means a real lot to me. So thank you both very much.
Yeah. And I think, Sandy, that the point of all of this, you were one person, right? And then you brought a whole community together. I mean, you and I didn't know each other before this, and it's possible. Every one person can make a difference.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what our wild horses need.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, thank you both for coming on. And I hope that everybody got some good information today about the adoption and what they can do to help.
Yep. So, and like I said, reach out. I know Sandy, I'm not going to speak for you, but Sandy is willing to answer any of my questions. That's what we're here for.